And so I didn't have an argument. And by the way, I'm not convinced anybody else does either. Saying it's axiomatic isn't evidence. It's not an argument. Saying that the first cause argument or cosmological argument or they don't do what people think they do. And that's one of the reasons why I'm much happier sitting down. Well, I'm happy to sit down with someone who just says, I don't have any way to demonstrate the truth of this. I am just convicted and convinced. Okay, cool. But now we're talking about revelation is necessarily first person, and to everybody else, it's hearsay. And so for the people who are advocating for that, they're basically saying they have special access to information.
Yo, welcome back, everyone. Really appreciate you being here because this one is genuinely worth your full attention. So here's the setup. We have Ben Fischer, a Christian minister and apologist, going up against Matt Dillahunty, a former Christian turned atheist who has spent over 15 years debating this exact topic on the atheist experience. What makes this particular exchange so compelling is that at a certain point, Matt stops arguing as an outsider and starts speaking from lived experience. And the moment that happens, the entire conversation changes. Make sure you watch this one through to the very end, because the final few minutes are the part that most people are still thinking about long after the video is over. Quick thing before we jump in, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. I always get a kick out of seeing how far this channel reaches, and it genuinely makes the community feel more real when people check in. All right, let us get into it.
I don't know if that helps at all, but
I don't know that it does, because that's not remotely my understanding of axiom. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy to go through and look up under whatever philosophical dictionaries you want. But if you just go to Wikipedia to start with, it specifically points out that an axiom, postulate, or assumption is a statement that is taken to be true to serve as a premise or starting point for further reasoning and argument. The fact that we're taking something as true is not the same as it is true. And if you have something that is unfalsifiable, I don't know how you can possibly ever hope to show that it's true. I don't know how there can be a demonstration of the truth. But in like axioms in mathematics are things that we assume. What we're assuming is not X is true, but we're assuming it is universally true, that there is a uniformity and that there's no way and no circumstances ever where mathematics is denied or is wrong. So, I mean, granted, I
think that leads to some immediate problems. That leads to if we say that
Wikipedia and correct it.
If we say that there's something out, there's a possibility that outside of the universe, the axioms of mathematics don't apply because we don't know they're just coherent in this universe, then how do we know that we're not living in that universe, in which case it's not true?
As soon as we start talking about this universe and suggesting that there are others, well, now we're way out there, because how would you demonstrate that there's another universe in anything other than an abstract sense of saying, as a thought experiment? This is where we get into problems with modal logic and where I have issues with S5. But if we're generally looking at this and saying, in all possible worlds or necessary in these worlds, we've departed from what we're actually talking about in this universe, where you need to present evidence for a proposition on something that exists empirically, not as an abstraction. The thing that we accept as axiomatic, the things that we accept as presuppositions, like identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, and the basis and the uniformity of the universe, those things that we take, we take as a matter of necessity because we can't demonstrate them. It would be a mistake to also say that the foundation for this, or my proposed foundation for this, is something that is axiomatic and therefore true, because axiomatic is not true.
Give you a super
axiomatically
short
true that this,
super short rebuttal.
Sorry,
okay. Go to the next one.
Yeah. It is axiomatically true that this half of the rectangle is smaller than this one. That's self-evidently true. That's essentially what we're talking about.
Gotcha.
But anyways, go on. Yeah.
This one, thanks so much for your question. This comes in from, let me know if I mispronounce this, friend. Fischer says, if the resurrection was, quote, good evidence, and God used his power to resurrect Jesus, how many watts did it take have a precedent in physics to support this?
Oh my goodness. Do we have to answer this question?
No. Next up, thank you for your, let's see, Pilgrim. I think we We got that one. Matt Wilson, thanks for your question. Said, Ben, geometry guy here, because nothing changes when you assume God or no God, i.e. not observable. It can not be an axiom. If you say something is an axiom, you can prove it must be an axiom.
And I would say that we don't need operational instances in the physical world of mathematics to prove that mathematics is true. I don't think we need that. We can deal wholly in the theoretical entities and know that it's the case. I just don't see why there's any reason to suppose that that would be true.
This is one of the most satisfying moments in the entire debate, because Ben had just finished explaining his definition of an axiom as something self-evidently true, and Matt Dillahunty did something that very few people do in debates like this. He did not argue from memory. He went to the actual definition. And here is why that matters so much. Ben's entire case for God rested on the axiomatic argument, not miracles, not historical evidence, not anything observable. The whole foundation of his position was that God's existence is self-evidently true in the way that mathematical principles are self-evidently true. And the moment Matt pointed out that an axiom is a statement taken to be true as a starting point, not a statement proven to be true, the ground shifted completely. You have to understand what Matt is actually saying here. He is not just splitting philosophical hairs. He is pointing out that Ben has been using a word to mean something it does not mean. Taking something as true and it actually being true are two completely different things. And if the strongest evidence Ben can offer for God is something that by its own definition cannot be demonstrated, then what exactly has been presented tonight? And then Matt goes even further. He points out that once you start talking about possible worlds and abstract universes outside of the one we actually inhabit, you have already left the territory where evidence is even possible. Because in this universe, the one we are actually in, presenting evidence for a proposition means pointing to something empirically real, not something abstract, not something assumed, something you can actually examine. Ben's response to all of this is to retreat into the distinction between presuppositions and axioms, a distinction that, as Matt correctly notes, does not actually save his argument because the core problem remains. He is still asking everyone to assume the conclusion rather than demonstrate it.
Gotcha, and thanks for your question. The uncle that doesn't, I don't know what that means, but they say I may have missed it, but assuming the God in this discussion is the Christian God, what's the argument accounting for the inaccuracies in the Bible?
So I'm assuming this is for me.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think it would be up to me to defend why there are inaccuracies in the Bible.
No. So Bible, quote unquote, inaccuracies, I think that we would need to deal with each of these inaccuracies on a case by case basis in order for me to come into agreement that they are inaccuracies. As I've studied the scriptures, I don't find a lot of good grounds to suppose that this is an inaccuracy or that is an inaccuracy. They seem to be fairly accurate. I suppose it depends upon what body of evidence you've encountered that says that this thing is inaccurate. We can certainly talk about what that evidence is, but
the order of events in Genesis 1 aren't accurate. I mean, the order of events in Genesis 1 aren't accurate according to the findings of science.
I want to give,
I
can give Ben a chance.
Sort of an alleged science. Okay, the alleged science problem. Oh, okay.
Well, right. if you want to give I don't want to gang up on you because I know the super chat was trying to challenge you. If you want to give a quick rejoinder, and then we have to go to the next one.
Sure. I think I would say that, there have been theologians that have attempted to give accounts or readings of the book of Genesis such that it does cohere with the order of events as described in the book of Genesis. You can see Dr. Hugh Ross has done a lot of interesting work in this area. There are others who have done interesting work in this area as well. But I think that, this would essentially go a little bit deeper into my Christianity than the debate seemed to be demanding of me in my preparation for it. So If pressed by the moderator beyond that point, I'll try to give the best I can at the moment.
No problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, that's fine. Please continue. If you want to.
Luminiferous Ethan, thanks for your question, said, great discussion, even if the topic didn't get addressed. Seems to be a disagreement on what constitutes evidence, which is a discussion in itself. Kudos to both participants. Yes. Stay safe, everyone. Well, that was nice.
Yes, and same to the commenter.
Thanks.
Yeah, please stay safe.
And then comes the moment that I genuinely did not see coming. Because the conversation shifts from abstract philosophy to something completely concrete and specific. Someone asked Ben about inaccuracies in the Bible. And Ben says, and I want you to really hear this, he says he does not find a lot of good grounds to call anything an inaccuracy. The scriptures seem fairly accurate to him. That statement lasts about 4 seconds before Matt responds with one of the cleanest factual challenges in the entire debate. He points to the order of events in Genesis 1 and states plainly that it does not match what science has established. Not as opinion, as a documented factual discrepancy. And here is what makes Ben's response so revealing. He calls it an alleged science problem. He then points to theologians who have tried to make Genesis cohere with the scientific record, which is itself an admission that the text as written does not naturally cohere with it. You do not need theologians to reconcile something that was never in conflict. The very existence of that theological work is the acknowledgement that there is a conflict to be resolved. This is the part that blows my mind about how these conversations tend to go. When the text fits the evidence, people say it confirms the Bible. When it does not fit the evidence, people say it is hyperbole or allegory, or that theologians have found a way to read it differently. But you cannot have it both ways. Either the text means what it says or it does not, and if it only means what it says when it is convenient, that is not a reliable document. That is a document being selectively read. Ben admits as much when he says this goes deeper into his Christianity than the debate demanded of him in preparation, which is another way of saying he did not come ready to defend this specific claim.
Thanks, Johnny Moe, for your question. Says, if it's not too late for this question, Matt, if you recall, what was your number one argument for God when you were a believer in the past?
So while I believed from the time I walked down the aisle at 5 all the way up until I was around 30-ish or something like that, I don't know that I had particularly good arguments, and I don't know that I engaged that much. Mainly any witnessing that I did to other people wasn't about evidence or argument. My job was to let the Holy Spirit work through me to convict them of the truth that they needed Jesus and were dead and destined for an eternity either in hell or annihilation. I'm not completely sure which one I believed at various times. Without it, it wasn't a matter of evidence. It was, here's what the Bible says. You are either in accordance with this, which you won't be, or you're not. And if you're not, you need Jesus, and that's what the book says. And so I didn't have an argument. And by the way, I'm not convinced anybody else does either. Saying it's axiomatic isn't evidence. It's not an argument. Saying that the first cause argument or cosmological argument or they don't do what people think they do. And that's one of the reasons why I'm much happier sitting down. Well, I'm happy to sit down with someone who just says, I don't have any way to demonstrate the truth of this. I am just convicted and convinced. Okay, cool. But now we're talking about revelation is necessarily first person, and to everybody else it's hearsay. And so for the people who are advocating for that, they're basically saying they have special access to information. God will either reveal himself to me or he won't. It's not their problem, and all they want to do is make sure that I've heard about Jesus. Well, congrats. I've heard, I've taught it, I've preached it. Well, whatever. Yeah.
And this is where the entire segment lands with real weight, because Matt is not just an atheist arguing from the outside. He is someone who was a Christian, who walked down the aisle at 5 years old, who believed all the way into his 30s, who witnessed to people, who taught the faith, who preached it. And when asked what his best argument for God was during that time, His answer is that he did not have one. His job was never to present evidence. His job was to let the conviction happen through the Holy Spirit. Evidence was not part of the process. That is not a dismissal of faith. That is an honest description of how belief actually functions for most people. And it is devastating precisely because it is said without anger or contempt. Matt is not mocking believers. He is describing his own experience from the inside. And then he delivers the line that closes this entire segment. He says he is not convinced anybody else has a good argument either, that calling God axiomatic is not vidence, that it is not even an argument, and that the first cause argument and the cosmological argument do not actually accomplish what people believe they accomplish. Think about the weight of that coming from someone who once used those very frameworks to convict others of the truth. He is not rejecting something he never understood. He is rejecting something he once held and taught, because when he actually looked at it closely, the foundation was not there. And then the final line. Someone tells him he should hear about Jesus. And Matt's response is simple. Congrats. I've heard it. I've taught it. I've preached it. That is not arrogance. That is experience. And it lands exactly the way it should. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.